This is the Sixth Man Show, an Orlando Magic podcast, with your hosts, Luke Sylvia and Jonathan Osborne, covering all things Magic basketball. By fans, for fans. Go Magic! What's going on, Orlando Magic fans? You guys are back with the Sixth Man Show. Today is January 19th, 2023. Jonathan Osborne here. As always, I am joined by my illustrious co-host, Luke Sylvia. Luke, what's up?
Illustrious. I love that. Just beautiful.
I was going to say nice voluptuous, but that didn't feel right.
Hey, yo.
Hey.
Yeah. It feels weird. I'm going to be honest with you. I just was saying it before we started recording, but not having any games, it's kind of odd not to recap anything. I don't know, man. That's just very, very weird.
It is weird. You know what, though? What are we, like 45 games through now? It's a nice little breather for me. Like the last 4 days, no Orlando Magic basketball. Just been able to relax a little bit. We were on a trip. We came back. Now we're getting ready to move. It's like a nice little breather for me, kind of in the middle of everything. So it is weird, but it's been like, don't have to watch the Magic tonight. There's no chance that the Magic can disappoint and frustrate me for the most part tonight. But
they also can't get you out of your seat in a good way either. So, you know, it's got its pros and cons.
Last couple weeks, that's been a little bit fewer and far between, though. You know, so I need a little bit of a break.
Spoiled us. They spoiled us with that
the Utah and the Denver games really, really put me in a dark place. I'm just now getting over that Denver game, especially.
Yeah.
So, folks, we have a great episode planned for you guys. Obviously, no Magic games to talk about. But our good buddy, Jeff Turner, color commentator for Bally Sports Florida, covers the Orlando Magic. He joins the show in just a little bit, and we talked about kind of the second quarter of the season, what's been good, what's been bad, and what his thoughts are for the rest of the season. So make sure that you stay tuned for that. That will start in just a few minutes here. But we do have a couple of things to talk about before we get into the interview with Jeff Turner. Talking about all-star voting, Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, Markelle Fultz, Wendell Carter, Cole Anthony, whoever you want to vote for on the Orlando Magic, make sure that you vote for them every day at vote.nba.com, or you can vote in the NBA app. And then coming up on the 20th, because voting closes on the 21st, the 20th is going to be the last 3-4-1 day where your one vote counts for three. So make sure, especially if you don't vote, if you haven't voted at all, if you're not going to vote any other day, make sure that you vote January 20th so you can get that 3-for-1. Again, that is the last day of the 3-for-1 voting, and then voting closes January 21st. Probably a long shot that Paolo gets voted into the All-Star game, but who knows? Maybe a K-pop star will inspire the masses to vote for Paolo Banchero, much like they did last year for Andrew Wiggins. So a little bit of an update. We don't have a State of the Magic because it hasn't changed since our last episode. You want to hear the State of the Magic? Go listen to our last episode. It was phenomenal, like they always are. But on the injury front, Chuma Okeke has not really been progressing towards encore activity since he had that chondroplasty, kind of trimming up, I believe it was the cartilage in his left knee. So we're still kind of waiting for Chuma to get to the point where he is resuming basketball activity. So it seems like he's going to be out. My guess, Luke, would be at least another few weeks. Jonathan Isaac, I know we've been talking about this for the last several episodes. We were really circling January 20th, Friday, against the Pelicans at home on our calendar for a potential Jonathan Isaac return. That looks like it is all but absolutely not going to happen because he's playing Thursday in Sioux Falls for the Magic's G League team, the Lakeland Magic. And he will be joined by Caleb Houston. I believe RJ Hampton is still playing for the Lakeland Magic as well. So they got a nice little G League squad going on right now. Caleb Houston played, what was that, Tuesday night for the Lakeland Magic, and I believe he dropped 24 points. Go Caleb Houston, big Caleb Houston fans. Luke, no Jonathan Isaac just yet, but it should be soon, I think.
Soon, you think, and we hope. Like you said, we had kind of maybe naively circled January 20th because, let's be honest, despite what we feel and what we think is logical or whatever, we don't, we're not exactly behind any curtains. So we don't know what this team is ever going to do. And it just happens that he's not going to be playing the 20th, like you said. I'm hopeful, like you said, it'll be soon. We'll see. But man, I really can't wait, and we talk about that with Jeff as well. So stay tuned for that. As you guys are listening, we'll talk about JI and his return and impact and what that means for this team.
You've probably heard us talk about this a ton of times now. If you're a new listener, maybe you haven't. You've been listening for a long time and you thought, man, I really want to join their Patreon, kind of commit to that and help support the show financially. Now is your time to do this. If you have been waiting and just hoping for a sign to join our Patreon, this is your sign. Press pause, go to patreon.com/the6man show. You have 4 awesome tiers that you can choose from, like joining our Discord community where we talk basically all day, every day about the Orlando Magic. There's a lot of stuff happening in there, especially during games. We have monthly Zoom hangouts where we hang out with our Hall of Fame and elite tier patrons and really just talk about the Orlando Magic and really anything else that you can think of. It's a lot of fun. Again, you can find us at patreon.com/the6man show. We shout out our brand new patrons on every episode. We also shout out our patrons that upgrade from one tier to another. And then we shout out our Hall of Fame and elite tier patrons on every single episode. So really quickly, I want to first of all shout out our boy Ryan Bolby, who upgraded from our All-Star tier to our Hall of Fame tier. Ryan, really appreciate that. And then we have a brand new Hall of Fame tier patron, Barry M. This is a family-friendly show, so I am not going to be saying your last name, Barry, even though I know that's not your real last name. But if you are familiar with the famous Barry M Twitter account, you can kind of read between the lines and play a little Mad Libs and fill in the blank there. But Barry M, we really, really, really appreciate you joining the Patreon community. Welcome. Hope to see you in our Discord community. And, at some point we'll have a little talk. You try to catch me slipping there, but it did not work. But we appreciate the effort. Very, very funny Patreon name. And with no further ado, I am going to shout out our Hall of Fame and elite tier patrons. As always, we are going to go ahead and start with the Court Cousins, and then Armin, Carson Tulo, Jonathan Borges, Normal, Magic Player History, Julio, Bailey, Gabe Gaines, Wiffle, Michael Martin, Jamel Miller, Michael Salapong, Franz Godefisho, The Distract, Mo Bamba, Yo Mama, petition to get Kristen Ledlow in the meetings, Pierre A. Migzor's Nostalgia and M&M's, Dylan Holden, Mr. Mikey, Lil Penny, Eduardo Sanchez, Drum, Danimal, Dodo 15, Bobby Skinner, Goody 93, Teddy Sylvia, Eric Lopez, Fuchsia, Juan Giraldo, Bill Fulton, Edmund Lagone, Jose Esquilin, Destined for Greatness, Caleb Pete, Cannibalism, Time Mr. TV, Joe Rothfuss, ESPN Really Sucks, Gear 95 Shred, Junior Bruce, Half Freakin, Shahin 177, Ryan Bolby, Himlo Ban Himro, RM Prof 221, Ray Pastrana, Magic Kid 714, Let's Spank, Don't Tank, Soft Taco, Jesse, and our good old buddy Barry M. Thank you to all of our Elite and Hall of Fame tier patrons, and a big thank you to all of our patrons. Let's get into our conversation with our good buddy Jeff Turner. All right, Orlando Magic fans, we've got a special segment for you guys. So no basketball the last few days for the Magic. It's been a little bit weird. So we thought we would do something special. We talked to this gentleman right after the first quarter mark of the season, and he is generous enough with his time, I should say, to join us for the second quarter of the season. We're a little bit past the halfway mark. We are joined by Jeff Turner. Jeff, how are you, sir? Thanks for joining the show.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm doing good. Thank you.
Jeff, before we talk Magic basketball, your catchphrase, Kapaya. It's been a while since you've told the story, so I do forget. Where did Kapaya originate?
Kapaya is one of those words that it comes from Magic lore, I guess. Kapaya was I first heard it. Jerry Reynolds, back in the early years of the team, used it. We were playing a game against the Golden State Warriors, and those were the days when Tim Hardaway, Chris Mullin, Mitch Richmond were part of was it Run TMC? Is that what they call themselves?
Yep.
And we were playing at home, and Jerry Reynolds and Terry Catledge, at that point, I think they were both injured, sitting on the end of the bench, and Golden State was pretty good during that stretch, and they came out, and Tim Hardaway had one of those nights. Tim Hardaway, famous for that crossover and pull-up jumpers, and it was a stretch during the game, and he was just lighting Scott Skiles up. I mean, it was like one of those stretches where they kept feeding him the ball, and Skiles is doing everything he can, and all of a sudden, like Tim hits a shot, and with the end of the bench, we hear "Kapaya," and then you go back down, and then Hardaway hits another. We hear "Kapaya," and so. The greatest part of it was Scott's face. Like, he knows where it's coming from. He's looking at the bench. His face is beet red. And the rest of us are all just kind of, trying not to laugh, because, but it's hard because it is so funny. So anyway, that's where it comes from. Jerry said that when he was growing up in Brooklyn, and he would go to the courts, Rucker Park and those places in New York, that Fly Williams, I don't know if you guys remember that name. He was a great legendary playground player that went on to play at Austin Peay University. I don't know if he didn't have much of an NBA career, just a short NBA career. But I guess Fly would say "Kapaya" every time he would let one rip through the net and everything. So, my using it is just a kind of a way to, just to keep it alive. It's a piece of, magic lore, as I say, and it's just kind of fun. So I save it for a big three. Usually, every now and then I'll drop it a couple of times in a game, but I try not to overdo it.
Well, so it originated for someone trying to roast their boy, which I can definitely appreciate. I love that.
Somebody said it's what is it? It's what is it that young people do? It's like a trolling, I guess.
Yeah,
so
yep.
It was real life trolling, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So, Jeff, obviously right there, you brought us down kind of memory lane of some players. You said Jerry Reynolds, you said Fly Williams as well. And I was looking at Fly Williams because I personally had not heard of Fly Williams. But yeah, I looked him up. He's got the Austin Peay jersey on, all of that. He also played 1 year in the ABA, 9 points a game, 2.5 rebounds, only 17.5 minutes. So I do wonder, like you said, kind of a legend in some respect, and to only play 1 year in the ABA. I wonder what happened. I'm going to have to dig. That's just for the people who are listening along with me and had the same thought. Like, I wonder who that is. You don't just get a cool nickname like Fly and then not get to look it up. But so
it's even better. So if you dig, those of us old enough to remember. So at Austin Peay, when he was playing, it was you'll see a great score for them. The chant from the student section was "The fly is open, let's go pee." So that was
I did know. My cousin ran track there, so I knew about the "Let's Go Pee" chants and pee on Murray because they don't like Murray State.
Exactly.
So incredible. Like I said, I'll definitely have to do some more digging. Now, like Jonathan said, it came from just like trolling or roasting, your own player, which is like Jonathan said, I can get on board with. That brings me to the question: in games, there's a lot of times that like so one of your guys, one of your teammates might get dunked on, and you said you guys were trying to hold in laughter. How hard is it to actually keep yourself composed on the bench in a game that might not matter, or a game that does matter, and one of your teammates, something happens to them, a highlight play against them? Is that hard to compose yourself?
I think so. I think it's I don't it's funny, like back in the back when I played, your teammates were the hardest people on you, right? That's your family or your brothers, and you spend all this time together and everything. So it's in a locker room environment, it's always like there's competition, and then there's always like, if something happens, if there's any weakness, if you'll always hear about it, so I remember playing, and like you said, someone would get dunked on or something like that, and then the next day at practice, somebody might walk out, and whoever it was, Shaq or somebody is reenacting like this, and kind of just playing it out, exaggerating it and everything. So nobody lets you forget anything. There's no doubt, especially your teammates.
So, Jeff, I want to, kind of switch gears here, talk about the Orlando Magic. So when we first had you on, a little over a month ago, I can't believe the season is going by as fast as it had. At that time, the Magic were 5-19, just 5 wins on the year. They had lost 8 games in a row. The Magic are now 16-28 through 45 games, or 11-9 since our last recording. The Magic had just lost to the Toronto Raptors. They played the Milwaukee Bucks on a Monday. They lost to them. And then they go on that 6-game winning streak. I want to go through just where the Magic were in terms of like advanced metrics during that time and where they are since. So during those, first, what was that, 24 games, they were 27th in offensive rating, 27th in defensive rating, 27th in net rating. They were 29th in turnover percentage, 25th in pace. Now, Markelle Fultz had just gotten back the last time that we spoke with you. So since the last time we talked, Jeff, the Magic are 21st in offensive rating. They're 10th in defensive rating, 14th in net rating, 14th in turnover percentage, and they are now 13th in pace, Jeff. Big improvements across the board for the Magic over the last 5-6 weeks here. What do you think are the biggest reasons for that?
Well, I think we kind of talked a little bit about the impact I thought Markelle Fultz would have on the team. It took a little bit. I kid with Markelle that he needed to move these guys a little further, a little faster to adapt playing with him. I think it's the pace part of it. I think it's guys are figuring out that if you run, that he's going to push the ball ahead. He's going to find open looks for you. Defensively, I think the biggest key as far as Markelle goes is I think he's been a lot better than we even anticipated. I think and Jamal Mosley talks about this, his hands, his anticipation, the way he moves, gets around screens. Markelle, I think if he qualified, I'm not sure if he's there yet at almost 1.7 steals a game. I think that would put him in the top 10 or close. So, I think that's a big factor. Listen, the reality is during that stretch, right? We just got Markelle back. We just gotten Cole Anthony back. Shortly thereafter, I think, I guess we didn't get Wendell back for a little bit. We had gotten Mo Wagner back, I guess, and he moved into the starting lineup, so we had a little more depth. I think the biggest part, and I'm a big believer in this, is that in order to be successful in the NBA, you have to have continuity. Continuity of, who's on the floor, playing time, rotation patterns. And most importantly, the best teams are healthy teams. Your best players have to be on the floor. And I think you see this throughout the league. Boston has, they've been pretty healthy. We saw a Denver team on the road trip that's been very healthy, not missing a lot of games. I think Sacramento's success this year, we saw them out there. Those guys haven't missed, 4 or 5 games at most. That is a big part of being a good basketball team. And so I think what you've seen over the last 20 games is that we're a team that's starting to get healthy. The rotation patterns are, Jamal's using 9-10 guys. You pretty much can predict, who's coming in at each opportunity. Cole Anthony is typically that first guy. He's going to come in for Franz Wagner. Players like that. When you're coming in, when you're coming out, you can gear up and you know what your minutes are going to be. So, and to add on that, coaches like that as well, to your point, I think the defensive numbers are guys get used to playing with each other. You've got right rotations, and Jamal Mosley can put guys in the right place, when he's juggling minutes and lineups. He's always keeping his best players on the floor.
Would you say, Jeff, who are you're talking about players getting time together? We've seen this team through basically half the season to this point. Is your favorite duo the kind of clear-cut one that most people would say, or do you have two players that you enjoy that they share when they share the court together?
Oh, wow. Well, that's a good one. I guess the duo that I really like, that I think, we saw last year and we saw early a little bit. I really like the Franz Wagner, Wendell Carter, high screen and roll. I just think that is a really good action for our team. I think those two are so smart. They do such a great job with that. Franz is just a great decision maker, what he reads. So I think that is a good combination for us. And, I think that, as we move along, I think Paolo and Wendell will be good in that situation. I think what we're seeing is, I think when you look at what Paolo and Franz are becoming, they are a good 1-2 duo. I like them on the floor together. And I think we're seeing with Wendell as well that we've got a front court, a starting front court that functions very well together. If I'd love to see, and Jamal messed around with this a little bit early, but Wendell just coming back in, it's kind of changed things a little bit. And we'll see it more, is really kind of running some 3-man action on one side of the floor, where you're posting. You can post either Wendell or Paolo and run some, screening actions on the perimeter and dives to the rim. I think those are things we're going to see in the future.
So talking about Franz, especially, Jeff, Paolo right now, the last returns in All-Star voting, he finished top 10 in the front court, in the Eastern Conference. And I would argue, as great as Paolo has been, and he's had a phenomenal, borderline historic rookie year, I would argue that Franz has been almost a little bit better in that regard, just numbers up all across the board in terms of scoring and efficiency. What do you think has been Franz's biggest area of growth this year?
Well,
there's a lot.
Well, yeah, I just think, I think we saw it a little bit last year, but it's even better this year. I just think he's one of the best drivers and finishers for a second-year player that we get to see nightly. It's interesting. David and I have the opportunity. We go, every game. Well, you guys know this as well. You can go in and listen to the opposing coaches before the game and get their comments. And a lot of times they'll be asked about Franz, and they all light up. They love his ability to get into the paint. And when he's in, I think it's better since he's not necessarily on the ball as much, although that's a good thing for us. But as a secondary attacker, when he's downhill and he gets one-on-one with a big or whatever, he can change directions and finish with either hand so well that he's really, I think he's really become really adept at that. And the other thing that we're seeing, because he's attacking so much, he's getting to the free throw line regularly. I think last time we talked, we were talking about Paolo. We hadn't had anybody get to the free throw line, 4+ times a game since Dwight, I think, is the number. And now we've got two guys, right? We've got Paolo's getting there 7-8 times a game, and Franz is up over 4, and that number is probably even higher if you look over the last 20 games. So that's a big thing. And then lastly, if you go back and you look, since Markelle has been back, Franz is shooting 40% from 3. He's getting more spot up threes now that he's out on the perimeter a little bit more. So I think if you ask me what area, I think all, at every level, he's improved. He was shooting the ball really well from the free throw line. I don't know if David Steele jinxed him and just jinxed the Wagner boys or what. But
the whole team.
Well, I don't. Maybe they've come down a little bit since then. He was holding an "Is this anything?" Topic. For the last, I guess last year we were bottom 5 in free throw makes per game. For most of the season, we've been top 5. But that slipped a little bit here, especially on the road trip. So hopefully we can get that going so he can use that one at some point. So
I have a stat for you, Jeff, that really backs up what you're talking about in terms of Franz Wagner, his ability to finish at the rim. So NBA University on Twitter, might not have heard of NBA University, might have, but he has really made a name for himself. We had him on the show earlier in the year, and his Twitter following is exceptional now because of things like this. So he put out this statistic that I'm sure he got from somewhere, but he put it out there and just talks about his finishing at the rim. Franz is 6th percentile in rim shot quality. This is as of January 9th. 6th percentile in rim shot quality. So that's not good at all. But he is 98th percentile in rim shot making. So, and he attributes, he goes on to say, his Euros, scoops, hooks, floats, dunks, transition, he's got everything. And you absolutely make the argument there just based on that. He's a top 10 finisher in the NBA this season. So I wanted to provide context to that. I also wanted to ask you, in his jump from his rookie to sophomore year, did you imagine any world where he goes from being a 15 some point per game scorer to 20, improves on efficiencies, gets to the free throw line more? Did you see any of that coming, or are you pretty surprised at all of that?
Well, I think you're always, you kind of wonder, against with any young player, right? What's the ceiling and everything? But I think, when we watched Franz last year, you see him and what he does, his ability to cut. He's one of the top cutters in the league and finishers, right? And just his smart. Franz is one of those guys, I think, that his numbers are going to be better as the more the quality of his teammates, right? The better the Magic get, adding Paolo, playing alongside a healthy Markelle Fultz. I think, when you can't load up on him, that was my argument last year when, I would have these conversations nationally about the Rookie of the Year conversation, right? Like, I think Evan Mobley's a great player and certainly Scotty Barnes and everything, but they're playing with all-stars, right? They're playing on playoff level teams with all-stars, and they're, putting up those numbers. Franz was not playing with all-stars, right? He was putting up those numbers, those, the efficiency numbers, not just empty points, right? He was putting up good efficiency numbers among all the rookies, leading in most of those categories. So kind of looking at those numbers, you say, man, if we can put good players around him, with him, then, it's not inconceivable that what we're seeing, Luke, actually happens, right? That he's making a big jump. And I think, that's the case. His fourth quarter scoring right now is really rolling. And, a lot of that is teams at times loading up on Paolo or, trying to keep loading up on a Cole Anthony who's getting hot or whatever. And I think, Franz is benefiting from that in a lot of ways. Plus he's just, he's just an unbelievable competitor. I mean, when you talk to him, he's just so easygoing and everything. But when you're courtside and you're watching, he is, he's pretty fiery, man. He's a competitor. He gets right in people's faces. So it's fun to watch.
He's definitely a fiery guy, Jeff. I know you're familiar with our buddy Philip Rossman Reich from Orlando Magic Daily. I was talking to him a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about the success of these big, wings, Franz and Paolo. And he gave me this little nugget. I want to give him credit. that if Paolo and Franz are both able to finish over 20 points per game, it would be the first time two Magic players have done that since Shaq and Penny. I'm sure you probably had a feeling, you probably knew that already.
Yeah.
But just putting those guys in that kind of conversation, what is that? What do you think about when I mention that?
Well, I mean, I'm just, it's kind of, we talk about these things all the time. It's, you've got to be excited for the future of this team, right? When you've got two foundational pieces like these guys, it's interesting. When we were in Boston, you're looking at two all-stars in Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, right? And you look and you think back, Jaylen Brown came in a year before Jason Tatum, and you go back and you look at it from Jason Tatum's a rookie, Jaylen Brown's a sophomore, and you look at the numbers and everything. Franz and Paolo are better. Now, I'm not saying they're going to be,
I mean, you don't have to say it. We'll say it. We'll say it.
Well, the point is, there are duos, comparable. If you look and you say, okay, well, what did they do? And you want to make comparisons and what the potential is. Boston's got two core guys, right? And they built out around them. And I think, you're looking at it right now. I'm not sure that when Jeff Weltman and John Hamm were putting this thing together, they thought Franz Wagner was going to be that guy, but he is. He is a guy I think can get you 20 points a night just from what we were talking about. He's the better players. He's going to be right there because he's just very efficient player. Clearly, Paolo, as we talked, Paolo will be a star in this league for years to come. But I think Franz will be too.
So Magic fans, they love talking about Franz. They love talking about Paolo. Lately, the last couple of weeks, Jeff, a hot button issue with Magic fans has been Cole Anthony and his lack of, offensive efficiency. Just hasn't been scoring the ball, quite to his standard. What do you attribute that to?
Well, I think he's certainly on the trip. I think it was, the players, he had good looks, for Cole. I think it's, players go through ups and downs. Yeah, I still think it's, Cole is still adjusting, right, to this role off the bench. This is not something he's ever really done in his life. Cole has been the guy, for forever. You go back and look at his, I marvel. You go back and look at his senior year at Oak Hill Academy. The kid averaged a triple double. It's like wow. And he was like, top 5 guard coming out of high school, going to North Carolina, and the expectations. In Cole's mind, he may be, a starter in this league. But right now, his role is coming off the bench, being a 6-man or whatever. And I think he's still adjusting to that, finding his niche. I think it's a role that works real well for him. He has that ability, like a lot of bench guys that are successful. Cole can get his own shot. Cole doesn't need, if you screen for him, great, but he doesn't need it. You don't have to. He's going to figure out a way to get shots. And I think Cole is probably one or two, he has one or two games where he breaks out, and knocks down some shots. I think for him, the frustrating thing right now is the 3 ball's not going for him. He has really struggled on the road trip shooting a 3. And players go through stretches like that. So he's one of those guys that you just feel like he's going to snap out of that at any time. Just needs a big game to kind of set him on the right path.
Well, Jeff, recently, we're talking about Cole Anthony's struggles here as of late on the West Coast trip, those sort of things. Interested to get your take. This West Coast trip, you're obviously very, you're close to the action. You can kind of see body language, see how plays develop, things like that. Can you kind of talk to us about how, obviously the Magic were only 2 plays away from going 4-1 on this road trip. You have those heartbreaking losses here as of late against Utah, Denver, great teams that you would love to beat. But can you just talk about, what that was like, just being close for those moments, and do those losses like that ever get easier for you to be so close to?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it stings, right? Because you play a certain way in the Denver game. It was just the first half. You just felt like Denver could do no wrong, right? And we just struggled shooting the ball, and then we come out in the third quarter, and everything that was reported that they talked about in the locker room, they came out and did, right? Like they knew they had to, they had to play with force. They had to get to the paint. They had 16 points in the paint in the first half. And they just came out and were just in attack mode. They got up, they rebounded the basketball, which has been an issue for this team. Certainly on the road trip it was. And so, the fight, I think that's the thing that when I talk to people, Jamal Mosley and his staff and this team are earning a lot of respect around the league because they never quit, right? They are entertaining. People love to watch them because they're young guys. They're getting out and they're battling. But, you get down, you battled so hard. You took the lead in Denver. And then it's just, like the Aaron Gordon gets loose for the reverse dunk. I think, Caldwell Pope knocks down a transition 3 right before that. I mean, it's just like it's there and then boom, it's gone. But that happens against really good teams. So yeah, those are tough. But I think this Magic team, again, we just have to keep reminding ourselves that this is a young, hungry basketball team that is paying their dues. They're learning. It's hard for young teams to win in our league. That experience, having been through the battles, I think is so valuable. And, as much as it breaks their heart, I think I could have been more proud of a group. That the Portland game could have been disastrous, right? I mean, the Sacramento just thumped them, right? I mean, it was from the get-go. I mean, Sacramento controlled that game, never really in it. And then you go to Portland, tough place to play on a back-to-back, and they come out and give a pretty healthy Portland team all they wanted and come up with a big win there. So that was, that doesn't happen that often. So that's something you can hang your hat on too. Really, for this team to go and play that West Coast road trip and come out of there with 2 wins, go 2-3. Yeah, we could have been 4-1, but 2 wins in those environments, that's not bad. To go into Golden State, I know they were down a few people, but still to win in that environment, and then to go into Portland and win, those are big W's for this team.
Jeff, we talked about this earlier, but the last time that we talked to you, we lost 8 in a row. So we lost another one, and then we went on that stretch. And something that you heard really in every post game during that losing streak was like, we're close. And as a fan, I'm like, you just lost 6 in a row. What are we talking about? We're close. Like, you're getting your butts kicked every night. What's going on? But the Magic, they just kind of stuck with the process. They kept fighting night in and night out. And then things started to kind of break their way. I'm not saying we're going to go on another 6-game win streak here in a couple of days. Would be very nice to do so. But this team is capable of that. And this team is just kind of getting healthy at the right time. Jonathan Isaac, it looks like he's going to be back any day now, playing with Lakeland. What is your prediction for this team kind of the rest of the way here?
Well, I think the last time we talked, the idea of getting into the play-in was a long way away. At 5-19, I think we had the worst record in the NBA, and we talked about compartmentalizing, right? Look at those, small groups of games and see if there's improvement. Well, we got a pretty good grouping there right afterwards, right?
Yeah.
You win 6 straight, you go into Boston and win. The thing about it is, and I'll go back to my point, good teams, they're healthy, right? Your best players are available and on the floor. So, you think about it in those terms and what's happened. We're getting people back. We just got Bobo back from, his 5-game absence. And now you're going to throw Jonathan Isaac in here pretty quickly. So what can this team be? I mean, you're getting your best players healthy at the right time. But, like anything, it has to happen pretty quick. I was looking earlier, I guess, here we are, it's Wednesday, and going into tonight's games, I think we're 4 games out of that 10th spot right now. So, and if you look at it, I guess we're in 13th. If you go 8 through 12, all of those teams are 5-5 over their last 10. So they're not really running away from you, but we're 3-7 over our last 10. So we need a stretch, which I think is doable, right? I think, especially from now going into the All-Star break, it'll be, this is a good time to really kind of get yourself right back in the mix of things. And it wouldn't take much, to go on a nice little winning streak, go on a stretch where you get 7 out of 10. But again, just kind of looking at it, breaking and seeing if we're improving. I think, you talked about the advanced stats, the defensive rating, offensive rating. I think the offense has come up to a nice spot. I think the pace we're playing, I still think we can be a better defensive team. And a big part of that is I really think we've got the weapons. If you look at our size and our guards, 2 things. I think, and you're starting to see this, I think we can force more turnovers. I think we can, apply a little bit more pressure, and we should be a better rebounding team. I think that, to me, especially on this trip, this past trip, we just didn't do a good job on the glass. Too many second chance opportunities, too many extra possessions for our opponents. And so those 2 things, really, if they come around, which now, you throw Jonathan Isaac back in the mix, right? All of a sudden, and I'm not saying Jonathan's playing 20 minutes a game, but you've got a rim protection, you've got an outstanding defensive player, you got a rebounder. All those things should help. And if we do those things and become, a top 10 defensive rated team, I think that, then we're competing for the play-in position, and that's where we want to be. I really think, and I'm positive that it is, that's the goal that these guys have. If you're playing meaningful games in March, into February after the break, and into March and April, that's what this team needs, right? They need to be playing for something down the stretch besides ping pong balls.
As great as the team has been defensively, I've been saying that for weeks. They still have a whole other level to get to, Jeff, and we'll kind of end it with this here. Jonathan Isaac, came back, made his debut a week ago today, actually, for the Lakeland Magic. Has played in a couple of games. It seems like he's going to play, at least another one or maybe a few more here. How do you think that JI's looked so far?
I actually, to be honest with you, I'm amazed. I really am. The production, think about how much time he missed. I think Joe Glass sent out the stat going into that first game. He had missed 892 days since he had last played. To be what appeared to be as sharp as he was, what he was able to do, was just it's an amazing testament to Jonathan, right? To continue to battle through all that and not lose side of it. I'll be honest with you, I was so disappointed for him last year. There was some thought that he was coming back, and then he had the hamstring issue and everything. I never had to sit out that long, but when I tore my ACL, my whole goal was to get back on the floor, right? And that's all in your mind. That's all you're thinking about. And so, like, to go almost 3 years and not be able to reach that point where you're back on the floor competing is mind-boggling to me. Like, how do you keep pushing yourself? So for Jonathan to do that, and it doesn't matter if it's in Lakeland or where it is, to be able to do that and be rewarded, with good play, knocking down some shots, doing some things defensively, rebounding the basketball. That's got to be so encouraging to him. I tell you what, his teammates, I could hear them talking. David and I were actually talking with Markel and Wendell on the bus going to one of the games, after the first one, asking if they had watched it and everything. And they were talking about, what he, could bring. Wendell has not really played much against him or seen him that much. He remembered him from Florida State, but Markel had. And so he knew what he could be. So, I am amazed. Honestly, I was worried it would go the other way. Like, it would not, because it'd been so long that would be disappointing. And to do what he did was just incredible.
People, say what you want to say about how long it's taken and, the amount of injuries the Magic have had. The last two guys that we've had come back from major injuries, and it's early with Jonathan. You don't know what he's going to look like when he, comes back to the Orlando club. But Markelle Fultz came back, didn't miss a beat. Jonathan Isaac, maybe he missed one beat, but not many. He's looking really, really good. Yeah. Jeff, we really appreciate you joining. You and David, by far the best broadcast team in the league. We can't tell you how much we appreciate not only the way that you guys call the game, but the way that other teams' fans talk about you guys. You represent, the team and the fans, and people have nothing but great things to say about you guys. So keep doing a great job. We'll talk to you in another quarter of the season here. We look forward to it. And thanks so much for taking the time.
All right, guys. Thank you, guys.
Luke, our good buddy Jeff Turner, really appreciate him taking the time. Always fun to talk to him. Hopefully Jonathan Isaac is going to be back soon, Luke.
Yeah, we hope. And it's all, like you said, Jeff provides insight. You get to ask him. We ask him about, being up close and personal for those road losses here where the Magic could have easily ended up being 4-1 if we lived in a perfect world of hypotheticals. Also got a history lesson on where Capaya came from, which was a lot of fun. Learned about a new person and Fly Williams. So, which I'm going to definitely look into him because his actual name, Jonathan, is James Williams. So he got that nickname, and I want to find out why. So that was my fun part of the conversation. But yeah, he always provides great insight for us, and like you said, we'll have him on here in 20, 25 more games.
I got to tell you, Jeff really made me feel a lot better about the Magic playing chances, because when we talked to him, 5-6 weeks ago, it was like, oh, going to be tough to make that up. Right now, as games are being played tonight, the Magic are, still 4 games behind the Chicago Bulls for that final play-in spot. And he talked about, if you have the ability to go, 7-3, over a stretch of games here. If you look at like the Indiana Pacers, the Atlanta Hawks, Chicago Bulls, Toronto Raptors, Washington Wizards, all 5 of those teams over their last 10 are 5-5. That trend continues. You go 7-3. All of a sudden, going into like the middle of February, maybe the end of February, you're 2 games out of the play-in, and then like it's a real possibility at that point. So appreciate Jeff coming on. Always gives great insight, and I feel much better now than when we first started recording this episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure, man. We'll see. We will see what happens. Hopefully, we can string together some wins here. And like you offered up what he said too, right? Like all those teams 5-5 in their last 10. There's still hope. There's hope. I'm losing hope, but there's some hope.
There is some hope, folks. So coming up on Friday, the Magic will return to action versus the New Orleans Pelicans at home. Then they have a home road back-to-back on Saturday. They'll be in Washington to take on the Washington Wizards. So Magic basketball will be back in a flash Always great talking with Jeff Turner. The Magic in the middle of a 2-game losing streak. If they're able to pick up a game here on Friday, don't forget the day after every Orlando Magic victory, you can get 50% off your online order from Papa John's with code MAGICWIN. So if they win on Friday, you'll be able to enjoy that Magic Wizards game with a little Papa John's pizza. And who doesn't love Papa John's pizza? But Luke, I think that is going to do it for us for this episode. For Luke Sylvia, this has been Jonathan Osborne. You guys are listening to The Sixth Man Show, and we will catch you guys next time. See ya. Thanks for listening to The Sixth Man Show. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and Spotify to get new episodes downloaded directly to your phone. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to give us a 5-star rating and a review. It helps out the show a lot. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Sixth Man Show. We'll catch you guys next time. Go Magic!